Okay, let's talk about adding files and file groups to our SQL database. I'm going to start by opening up the SQL Management Studio. And this is a brand new install. Remember, I do not have a database to work with. We've got the system databases, but we're not going to screw with those. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new database, and we're going to look at creating files and file groups. Now, obviously, if you are doing this, hopefully you have planned this out in advance and you know what files and file groups you want. And the idea of doing multiple files and file groups is hopefully you're putting your files on different physical storage media, storage devices, so that you're getting some performance benefit by moving those files around. And then we can put things in file groups. So groups of files in a file group. And then when we create tables, we can put those tables onto specific file groups. And then we can move our tables onto different storage media that way. And again, the idea is by putting these things on multiple different storage media, different physical devices, we're going to hopefully get faster access to our media, so we're not trying to pull everything off of one hard drive or one RAID array, but we're using multiple ones for it. That's the idea behind doing so. Okay, let's talk about how we will do this. Now, if you remember, we have multiple system databases, but we don't have a user database yet. So I'm going to create a user database, and I'm going to come to databases, and I'm going to right-click and create new databases. And being really, really creative, I'm going to name this SampleDB. Okay, now you can see we've got a couple of files already associated with this. So we've got SampleDB, and then if we expand this over, SampleDB_log. The first one holds row data, the second one holds log data. The first one is on the primary file group. We have its initial size. We have its auto growth options right here. We can change this here, where we can define for this file, do we want it to grow by percentage or by a specific number of megabytes, and do we want to limit its maximum size? Or we can just uncheck it, not enable auto growth, but that's probably not a good idea because the file won't be able to grow as needed. Then as we scroll over, we're going to see the path to where the file is actually located, and then the file name. File name doesn't exist because we haven't actually created it yet. So here, if we click this, we can go through and choose a new location for that particular file. And again, the idea is let's put it onto different physical drives. Now, because I'm in a virtual machine, I don't have that option. So I'm going to have to put everything on the same drive, but I want to reinforce that, hey, we probably don't want to do that in real life. So these are files. This was part of the primary file group. If I go to file groups, you'll see I have one called primary. It has one file. It's not read-only. It can't be. It is the default file group, and we don't have this option to auto-grow all files checked. We're going to come back here in a minute. But for the moment, I want to create a new file group. So I'm going to add a file group, and I'm going to click here to set the name of it, and I'm going to call this my archive file group. No files currently associated with it. I don't want it to be read-only. I don't want to make it the default. When you create a new table, if you don't specify which file group it goes to, it will always go to the default file group. Okay, and then there are no files for me to set the auto grow. So I'm going to come back to general, and now I'm going to add a couple of new files. So I'm going to add the first one. I have SampleDB. I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this SampleDB2. So that's going to be my second database file. I do want it to be in the primary file group. I'm going to add another one. We're going to call this archive. Whoops, let me click into the right box. Archive1. Do without the space. And I want this one to be in my archive file group. Now, notice when I hit my drop down, I can set the primary file group, I can set an archive, or I can create a new file group from here as well. Let me go ahead and add one more, and I'm going to call this archive2. And again, I want to put that in the archive file group. Okay, so now I should have 4 files. Again, I can come in here, change the auto growth options and locations, and the file name that still doesn't exist because we haven't created it yet. So now I'm going to go back to my file groups, and I'll see that in my primary I now have 2 files. In my archive I have 2 files. And I'm going to go ahead and select auto grow all files for both, which means that if one of them needs to grow, they'll all grow. And that kind of helps balance data in the files and the way it's stored. So when I'm happy with that, I click OK, and SQL goes through and builds my database. Okay, cool. Now, what if I want to come back and look at these files and file groups a little bit later? Well, I do that by right-clicking on the sample database and going to Properties. And here under Files, I can see all of my files. And here's where I have my growth options, just like I did before. And my location, now I have file names for them. And then I can add additional files at this point if I need. Now, if I add a new file, what'll happen is SQL will dump a bunch of data into that file right away until it's about the same size as all of the others. So that's something you might want to keep in mind. It's one of the reasons that it probably helps simplify your life if you go through and plan all of your file storage and build it initially rather than having to add more onto it later. All right, in my file groups, you're going to see the same thing we had before. Here are my file groups, and again, I can change it, add file groups, and I can manage my files however I need to. Again, hopefully, we will have planned it out for optimum usage of storage media initially, and we created it that way. This is going to give us the option, if we have to make changes, to come back and make changes later. Now, while we're here, let's go ahead and talk about where these files are at. Let me go back here for a minute. We're going to find the files, and this gives us our path. C programs, blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to go to my file manager, and we're just going to go find it. We're going to go to C drive, program files, Microsoft SQL Server, Microsoft SQL 16.ms SQL Server. This is actually my instance name. And then MS SQL and data. And here are all of our data files, including archive1, archive2, sampledb, sampledb2, and sampledb log. So that's my physical location of all of my files. And this is where I can go and see how much is actually being used. Okay, there we go. We now have a functioning database, no data in it, but we've got it set up and we have its data storage configured.